Okay, so here I'm now discussing, again, in volume 2, we're in chapter 11. Chapter 11. Yeah. And this is overall chapter 34. I'm on page 1. I'll basically start on the bottom of 184, top 185. In any edition, this is the third paragraph of chapter XI. That's chapter 11 of volume 2, or overall chapter 34. Okay? What's happening here is Darcy is going to propose to Lizzie, and it shocks her. It takes her by surprise. This whole time, she's been biased. Ever since she heard him say, "No, I don't want to dance with her," that first time they were in the room together, she's just assumed he doesn't like her, and it's made her want to dislike him, and she's missed all his signals of interest. She's mistaken them all for him trying to find something, some flaw or fault with her. And she's been toying with him, and as in her own mind, consciously been there to sort of tease and mess with him and show him that she won't be intimidated by him. And all this has done is made him fall in love with her hilariously. The more she teases, the more she tries to get on his bad side, the more she tries to give him a hard time, the more he's charmed by this woman who's he's never met anyone like this. Every woman he's met before who's an eligible bachelorette, she's kissed his ass because he's rich, he's handsome, and women are of their social standing, these upper class gentry people, they want someone like him. Okay, and to be honest, most people want someone like that who's got the economic means to secure them. Okay, as you're seeing in our current meltdown, the economy is the fundamental thing. What's happened between chapter 25 and 34, where we now are, is that, and how did they come back together? So Darcy again separated Bingley and Jane, along with Bingley's sisters. They don't want him to marry Jane in volume 1 of the book. In volume 2, Lizzie goes to visit her friend Charlotte Lucas, who's married, to Lizzie's shock and dismay, married this guy Collins, Lizzie's distant cousin, who first proposed to Lizzie, and Lizzie says, "Are you kidding? This guy's a clown. I'm not going to marry this joker." And then Charlotte, who's older, she's about 27, Lizzie's 21, or sorry, 20. She's not even 21 yet. Charlotte's almost in danger of being an old maid. She's not pretty. She marries the guy for the economic security. Okay, and Lizzie is shocked by that, but she shouldn't be. Now, Charlotte lives in with him. He has a living. He's a parish priest in this area that's controlled by Darcy's rich aunt. Okay, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, and Darcy is there visiting his aunt, while coincidentally Lizzie is there visiting the Collinses. Her friend Charlotte has married, and she's now Mrs. Collins, and she's staying at their house. And so they're seeing each other again, and they're flirting, but Lizzie doesn't see it that way. They've been seeing each other, and Darcy's fallen for her to the point now where he's going to propose to her. And she, legendarily in literature, in our culture, she says no to this guy who no one's ever said no to him before. And it's awesome that she says no to him. So watch this part and just see his conceit, his arrogance, and his, again, the question being, are they being rude? Yes, they are. Okay? There's love on his side. There isn't love on her side really yet, but there's kind of hostility that he's been mistaking for interest, okay, on her part. And she will fall in love with him once the circumstances around Wickham, this guy that she thinks Darcy abused, when that becomes clear to her that was lies on Wickham's part, her mind totally changes about Darcy. Okay, so here we are. I'm on bottom of 184. She's pissed at Darcy, especially now because it's been revealed to her sort of accidentally by his cousin, Fitzwilliam, who's also there, that Darcy was celebrating the fact that he separated Bingley and Jane. She's become aware of this information. She's pissed. So he couldn't pick a worse moment to tell her, "Hey, I love you. Will you marry me?" She fucking hates his ass right now. Okay, so here we are. While settling this point, She was suddenly roused. This point is she's sitting there brooding like, this guy ruined my sister's life. I hate him so much. While she's thinking about this, she was suddenly roused by the sound of the doorbell, and her spirits were a little fluttered by the idea of it being Colonel Fitzwilliam himself, who had once called late in the evening and might now come to inquire after her. But this idea was soon banished, and her spirits were very differently affected when, to her utter amazement, that is, she has no idea why he's there, she hates his ass. She saw Mr. Darcy walk into the room. In a hurried manner, he immediately began an inquiry after her health. She refused to go to dinner at his aunt's house because she was so upset with learning that he was separating Jane and Bingley. Inquiry after her health, imputing his visit to a wish of hearing that she were better. She answered him with cold civility, and that's already, yeah, I'm fine. Like, don't talk to me. He sat down for a few moments, and then getting up, walked about the room. Elizabeth was surprised, but said not a word. After a silence of several minutes, imagine how awkward this is. He's about to propose to her. He came towards her in an agitated manner and thus began. This is Darcy. In vain have I struggled. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you. That's basically him saying, I want to marry you, okay? In not so many words, or in more words than saying, will you marry me? He's saying, I love you. Elizabeth's astonishment was beyond expression. She stared, doubted, and was silent. This he considered sufficient encouragement. Again, he thinks, how could any woman say no to me? Okay? And you see the judgment, the artistic judgment of Austen here. She's only quoted him saying those four sentences, and then the next two paragraphs are basically her reporting secondhand, what we call indirect speech. The author tells you what's happening without quoting the characters directly, what we would call direct speech. This will become important in my lecture on Wednesday. Elizabeth's astonishment was beyond expression. She stared, colored, doubted, and was silent. This he considered sufficient encouragement, and the avowal of all he felt and had long felt for her immediately followed. He spoke well, but there were feelings beyond those of the heart to be detailed, and he was not more eloquent on the subject of tenderness than pride. His sense of her inferiority, he calls her inferior while he's trying to say, will you marry me? He's so full of himself, you guys. It's astonishing. And it's being a degradation. He's degraded by her. Of the family obstacles which judgment had always opposed to inclination were dwelt on with a warmth which seemed due to the consequences he was wounding, but was very likely to recommend his suit. So he's so full of himself. He so can't even fathom that she would say no, that he's going to tell her, hey, your family sucks, but I still like you. In spite of her deep-rooted dislike, she could not be, and this is another paragraph I'm reading on. In spite of her deep-rooted dislike, she could not be insensible to the compliment of such a man's affections. Such a man means such a rich, haughty, and frankly, he's handsome too, tall, handsome guy. And though her intentions did not vary for an instant, she was at first sorry for the pain she was to receive. And now, this is her reaction to him saying your family sucks. Till, roused to resentment by his subsequent language, she lost all compassion and anger. She's offended. You imagine you propose to someone in such a way that it offends them? The proposal itself. She tried, however, to compose herself, to answer him with patience when he should have done. He concluded with representing to her the strength of that attachment which, in spite of all his endeavors, he had found impossible to conquer. He didn't want to like her because he knows she's economically inferior. She's beneath him, literally, in terms of their station in life. He outranks her. Okay, and was expressing the hope that it would. He concluded representing to her the strength of that attachment which, in spite of all his endeavors, he had found impossible to conquer. And with expressing his hope that it would now be rewarded by her acceptance of his hand. As he said this, she could easily see that he had no doubt of a favorable answer. He spoke of apprehension and anxiety, but his countenance, his facial expression, expressed real security. Such a circumstance could only exasperate further, and when he ceased, The color rose to her cheeks, and she said, and here's one of her famous, the beginning of her saying no. She has to tell him no over and over because he doesn't get it. He doesn't get that she's saying no. He's so arrogant. He's so full of himself. He's proud of who he is, and he has a right to be. But someone needs to check his ego, and it's Lizzie's job in this book to do that. And he eventually loves her even more for having said no here. Okay, in such cases as this, it is, I believe, the established mode. I'm on page 186 now. The established mode to express a sense of obligation for the sentiments avowed, however unequally they may be returned. It is natural that obligation should be felt. And if I could feel obligation, I would now thank you. But I cannot. I have never desired your good opinion, and you've certainly bestowed it most unwillingly. I am sorry to occasion pain to anyone. It has been most unconsciously done, however, and I hope will be of short duration. The feelings which, you tell me, have long prevented the acknowledgement of your regard can have little difficulty in overcoming it after this explanation. Mr. Darcy, who was leaning against the mantelpiece with his eyes fixed on her face, seemed to catch her words with no less resentment than surprise. His complexion became pale with anger, and the disturbance of his mind was visible in every feature. He was struggling for the appearance of composure and would not open his lips till he believed himself to have attained it. The pause was to Lizzie's feelings dreadful. At length, in a voice of forced calmness, he said, "And is this all the reply which I am to have the honor of expecting? I might perhaps wish to be informed why with so little endeavor at civility I am thus rejected. But it is of small importance. I might as well inquire." And they begin to argue here. And she says, why'd you offend me when you asked me? If you don't want to be offended, why'd you offend me? Okay? And then they get into the two issues on which she really, really can nail him, she thinks. One is, hey, as I've already was mentioning, you separated Bingley and Jane. You expect me to take your hand in marriage after you ruined my sister's chance of being with a guy that she loves? Like, who do you think you are, dude? You're. How could I possibly like you after you made my sister miserable, intentionally, consciously made her miserable? And Darcy his excuse is going to be, look, I judged that she didn't like him as much. Okay, I'm running out of time in this video, so I'm going to go a little more quickly now. And then the other thing is Wickham, this guy, George Wickham, who grew up with Darcy. Wickham's father worked for Darcy's dad, who was Darcy before, like the rich landowner guy. And Darcy's dad loved Wickham. They grew up together. And Darcy, when they grew up to be teenagers, Wickham went in a bad way. In college, he was very dissolute, meaning he drank. There's a suggestion that he had lots of affairs with women, things you didn't do at this time period if you were a certain station in life. And Wickham's accused Darcy of ruining his fortunes, of taking away this living as a priest he was promised. That's not true. Darcy paid him instead. Wickham said he didn't want it. And then Darcy eventually explains to Lizzie why he really dislikes him is that Wickham tried to elope with Darcy's little sister, who's 15. He tried to make her go and leave him. Okay, so now I'm going to skip to the end here where she says something that sticks with Darcy, and this will come up later. So they're arguing back and forth on this, and Darcy's incredulous. He won't believe her. He's like, you know, that's BS about your sister. She doesn't even like Bingley. What are you talking about? And then he's like, this guy Wickham is full of it. You don't know this about him, but he's lying. He's telling lies. And then they get here, and Darcy's saying, all I was doing was being honest with you. Okay, could you expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your connections, to congratulate myself on the relations whose condition is so decidedly beneath my own? I'm on page 188, middle of the page. Elizabeth felt herself growing more angry every moment, yet she tried to the utmost to speak with composure when she said, quote, "You are mistaken, Mr. Darcy, if you would suppose that the mode of your declaration affected me in any other way than as to spare me the concern which I might have felt in refusing you had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner." She saw him start at this, but he said nothing, and she continued, "You could not have made me your offer of your hand in any way, any possible way that would have tempted me to accept it." Again, his astonishment was obvious, and he looked at her with an expression of mingled incredulity and mortification. That is, he feels unbelieving and feels like he's dying. Mortified is to die. From the beginning, from the first moment I'm almost to say of my acquaintance with you, your manners impressed me with the fullest belief of your arrogance, your conceit, your selfish disdain for the feeling of others. It's this whole litany against him. And this really changes him, you guys. This is going to be key. It changes him. Okay, more to come in the next video. Bye.